Welcome to Living the Spiral. This is a place to slow down, take a breath, and listen to the rhythms moving through your life. Here we explore astrology, human design, the I Ching, and elemental ancestral wheels of the year from cultures around the world. These are old maps and living languages that help us sense where we are in time, what is asking to unfold, and how we belong to something far larger than any single moment. In each episode, we trace patterns in the sky and in the body. We weave myth with lived experience, intuition with practice, and the personal with the collective. Living the Spiral is about learning how to move with change instead of pushing against it. About meeting transitions with curiosity, integrating polarities, and remembering that every season carries its own powerful wisdom. When you begin to listen to the cycles, life starts to feel more connected, more meaningful, and more alive. I'm your host, Allison Dale, and this is Living the Spiral podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Living the Spiral. Today, we are here to talk about the new moon in Pisces, the equinox, the spring equinox in the Northern Hemisphere, the Aries equinox, and the astrological new year, which is the 0 point of Aries every year, the time when the sprouts start coming up above the earth. Generally speaking, those dicot sprouts that represent the ram's horns of Aries. We have reached the end of an astrological zodiac cycle, and this new moon in Pisces is happening on March 18th or 19th, depending where you are in the world, but it's happening at 28 degrees of Pisces, so the very end of Pisces. And right after that, Mercury retrograde is going to end and Mercury is going to station direct. And then we will have the astrological new year with the sun entering Aries. And so there's a lot happening this episode. There's a lot happening this week. It's a genuinely rare convergence for the new moon to be happening right before the astrological new year. So there's a lot of newness as well as a lot of endings. Mercury direct, the new moon, the equinox are all happening within 36 hours of each other. So we're reaching a major threshold point with this new moon. And I'll talk today about the human design gates that we're going to be influenced by during this new moon and during this astrological new year, and really dive into the endings and beginnings kind of energy that we're in at this moment. This is the first lunation outside of eclipse season, so welcome to the first new moon that's not an eclipse in a couple weeks here. It feels pretty nice. I feel a difference. And for me, the last eclipse happened right on my sun, and it was in the gate of confusion and imagination, the lunar eclipse, and it was kind of about releasing and letting go of feeling confused by needing to be perfect, I will say. That's kind of how it showed up for me. And so there's a lot of North Node activation happening this week. We have Mercury on the North Node as it's stationed retrograde and into its direct motion as well. And so the North Node is in Pisces, in kind of bringing a collective hunger to us all about being a little bit more open-minded and interconnective and a little less rigid and analytical, I would say. So we'll talk about that as well, kind of where Mercury is hanging out because of the retrograde and stationing direct motion, hanging out for quite some time on a particular gate. I did a zodiac season breathwork ritual every zodiac season. So from Aries all the way through Pisces, we met every month. Subscribers got a PDF that I created they're quite extensive, like 40-page PDF of the elements and the archetypes of the season, as well as the human design gates of the season. And it was really fun to walk the wheel of the year through the zodiac and really deepen into a lot of the correspondences of each zodiac season as it relates to what's happening in nature and what's happening in our bodies. Thank you so much to everybody who participated in any of those meetups on Zoom. Our Wednesday nights were really wonderful, and I have such fond memories of this past year as it comes to a close. This upcoming year, I'm going to be shifting it a little bit, doing 8 meetings rather than 12, and they're going to involve breath and somatic ritual, so a bit of movement, a bit of breath. No longer the long 45-minute conscious connected breath practice. I'm going to be moving into a few different types of breath practice depending on the season. But we'll also have a bit of time for creation, creative writing, art practice during these calls with some prompts and community discussion about the 8 holy days of the Wheel of the Year that correspond with the equinoxes and the solstices and the cross-quarter days that fall between them. This is known as the pagan Wheel of the Year or the Celtic Wheel of the Year. And I've been studying a lot of ancestry and ancestral healing and really wanted to deepen into my awareness of my Celtic and Germanic ancestors who celebrated these holy days, but they definitely do tie into the zodiac still, and I will be bringing human design and the I Ching references into it as well, because I can't stay away from that beautiful material of how the gates fit into each zodiac season. So each one of these rituals will start with the spring equinox and move all the way around to Imbolc at the beginning of next year. And they're going to be, just really fun, interactive time to get together. And I'll have a little bit of a presentation about the correspondences of that time of the year through the pagan Wheel of the Year lens, as well as the zodiac and human design. And then, we'll get into some embodiment and some creative practices. So I would love to have you there. I'm calling it Sprouting into Action, a spring equinox ritual. And this one is happening on March 21st, Saturday morning at 10 a.m. It'll be 10 to 12 Mountain Standard Time. And I really look forward to engaging with some new folks. There are a lot of new folks here on Substack. If you're listening here on Substack, I've just started adding these podcasts to my YouTube channel, and I've noticed a lot of new folks there as well. So wherever you're listening, whether it's any of the podcast players or one of those 2 channels, well, I'm so grateful that you found me here. It truly is touching to know that there's people out there listening to my ramblings about these cycles of time and the spirals that we're living through. Reach out anytime to Allison at hearthandspiral.com to say hi or leave a comment just to say what's up. Let me know who you are and where you're coming. I love this growing community, and I look forward to meeting up with some of you in person for Sprouting into Action ritual for this equinox, or one of the next rituals. Beltane will be next, the May Day festival in Taurus season. And so you can stay tuned for that if this Saturday, the 21st, doesn't work for you. I know it's a bit of a short notice. The equinox kind of crept up on me. I've been swimming in the waters of Pisces, and as much swimming and water as I can possibly get here in the desert where I am, and definitely feeling the tides. Just a lot of emotion has been flowing through my own body as well as the collective, as I'm sure we're all aware. And so I am feeling these kind of like flashes of light, like little strobe lights that go off, like you're swimming in a dark ocean and then you see a little like bioluminescence out of the corner of your eye. And that bioluminescence is Aries season. It's Saturn and Neptune and Venus all in Aries, kind of hinting at that the sun will soon follow, and Mercury and Mars. And we're going to have a lot of Aries activations very soon. And so we've been getting a little bit of a hint about that energy, about that kind of like catalytic spark Aries energy that comes into the seas of Poseidon, the Neptunian waters of Pisces season. As the earth turns and rotates and revolves around the sun, we are experiencing a wild time in this world. That's all I can say. There are so many massive big shifts in the cycles, the larger synodic cycles and the precession of the equinox cycle. There's so much happening on these grand scales, as well as on interpersonal scales, and how it affects our own lived experiences. And so I would say that this time of year between Pisces and Aries season, this transition from winter to spring in earnest is a challenging time any year, like any way you shake it. It's one of the more difficult transitions. I think all transitions are a little bit hard because we have to adjust. Daylight savings time, the spring forward that just happened last week has really been messing with people in a way that I haven't experienced as much. It's just a really hard on their bodies. Like, I can't, this 1 hour shift, oh my gosh, I can't do it. And it's messing people up for weeks. And so, any shift, any way that our bodies have to calibrate to a seasonal shift or a man-made time-based shift like daylight savings can be really taxing, far more than we're sometimes giving credit where credit is due. It's kind of like being in the womb. Feels pretty good to be inside there, especially as you grow and you kind of feel like nice and packed in, like tucked in. And then all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, there's like this cracking happening. There's this like water breaking kind of energy. It's like, oh man, okay, I knew it was time, but I'm not quite ready yet for this new reality, to be born into a new reality. And cracking through the shells of the seed, cracking out of the womb. My daughter always says, like, when did I hatch, mama? She talks about her birth as if it was a hatching, which she is part dragon, so it tracks, but it's pretty cute. But that hatching, right? The little chicks of spring equinox time coming out of the eggs, and just what that feels like. It's so natural, but it's so shocking to go from that warmth of the egg, of the womb, of the underground realm of roots and mycelium to suddenly be a little sprout out in the world and have to grow, have to find the sun, have to find water. So that's what sprouting into action, this workshop, this somatic embodied ritual on the spring equinox morning will be all about, is navigating that transition and navigating that threshold between the underworld and the above world and the liminal space of Pisces and the kind of like baby lamb with little horns sprouting out kind of energy of Aries. And yeah, we'll take some time during that workshop to be in the liminal. We're not going to rush ahead and just, make a big to-do list for everything we want to do this astrological year. But we're going to sit in that threshold, sit in the doorway, sit in the liminal, feel what it feels like to be a baby, whatever kind of baby we are, a human baby or a plant baby or a animal baby. Some kind of new beginning. We're going to attune to that and think about, just feel to our bodies what it really feels like to be fresh and new. And there's a certain innocence there. There's a certain naivete perhaps, but there's also a certain wisdom that comes from just coming from the other side, arriving out of the everything is everything all at once kind of quality of Pisces. And we bring a lot of what was learned, the wisdoms of those universal seas with us into each new beginning. So we're not starting from a blank slate. We're not starting from scratch. And so this workshop and a bit of this episode will be about really just recognizing the importance of being in the threshold, not rushing ahead into the new, but knowing that it inevitably will come, and paying reverence to what it is that we've learned in the past cycle. So come join me, link in the show notes or on livingthespiral.com is where my Substack lives. And you can also find me on Instagram, doing a bit of Instagramming these days, but more Substack. My Instagram is Hearth and Spiral, at Hearth and Spiral. And then my website, you can find me at hearthandspiral.com, where you can book readings. My books are open right now. I'm focusing on soul shine readings is what I'm calling them, which is a blend of astrology and human design, looking at the way that your soul shines and how you feel grounded and rooted so that you can sprout up into your potential, into your aspirations and the fullness of your authentic self. And they've been really fun readings to do lately. I also do human design and astrology specific readings. And I also do one-on-one breathwork sessions if you'd like to have a kind of guided natal chart inspired breath session that's a little bit more of a subconscious practice. Those are a few offerings that I have. Thank you for hearing those, and thank you for being here, new folks. And without further ado, let's jump into this new moon in Pisces. So the new moon is happening at 6:23 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on the 18th of March, and it is in the 28 degrees of Pisces, the second to last degree of Pisces. And in human design, this correlates to Gate 36, the very end of Gate 36, which is known as the Gate of Crisis. And the sun and moon, after meeting there in 36, will then travel together, sun first, then moon, into Gate 25, which is that gate of innocence and universal love. So we go from crisis, which is, I like to think of it as the birth canal, and we move into, or like the seed cracking, but the birth canal, and we move into the sprout. We move into the birth of the new year, the birth of the new cycle in Gate 25. So Pisces is disillusion. It's this place where the self loses its edges, where there's a boundarylessness quality. Pisces is like the sign where all of the rivers of all of the other signs and everything else we've learned during the course of a year, they all flow into Pisces and then lose their boundaries. There are no river boundaries in Pisces. It is the vast open ocean that blends in with the sky. And so Gate 36, this gate of crisis, really has a lot of emotional depth to it. It's this initiatory quality of kind of going underwater, and it's kind of a descent type of quality. It's about releasing and surrendering. In the gene keys, the shadow of Gate 36 is turbulence, the gift is humanity, and the city is compassion. So turbulence really tracks with a turbulent sea. I think of all of the ancient goddesses and ancient monsters that were usually in goddess form of some type that were in ancient Sumerian and Babylon lore, going into Greek myth and Roman myth as well. There is a sense of the primordial sea being this place of, the place where everything arose out of. Tiamat, the Babylonian kind of serpent, dragon, sea goddess, was seen as a monster in later times. And when she was killed, the sky and the earth were created from her two halves. But she was this everything is everything kind of goddess, like the tumultuous, vast seas of creation. And so that's what 36 really holds, is that type of turbulence. In the I Ching, this gate where the new moon is going to fall is called the darkening of the light. And so, for me, when I hear that, I think again of the birth canal. And I know I've talked about this a lot if you've been listening to my past episodes. As a mother during this transition from Pisces to Aries, I truly can't help but I did a breathwork session the other night with another mother, someone who had a younger child than I do, and it was a little more fresh, this notion of what it takes to grow a being and then birth them into the world and then let them, off to the races on their own terms. And so as we're in this transition right now, there's a bit of turbulence that comes with almost every birth. There's never a birth plan that goes exactly as planned. It's every single birth of a human, or animals too, for those of you who experienced animal births. It's always a lot more dramatic. And then dramatic might not be the right word, but it definitely has a certain quality of surrendering to the unknown. I will say that's required as you go into any process of birth. And you think about the seed cracking open underground. That's not something we can see, but we can feel what it was like. I've been planting a little garden with my daughter lately, and you don't see the seeds going through that process of cracking, of having the little sprout just poking out. You can see it with a bird beak poking out of the egg, and that's wild, because once the bird head gets out, you're like, that is a really weird looking creature it's not fully formed, but very quickly it turns into that fluffy, cute little chick or duck. In that transitionary period, there's like this rawness. It's covered in, that amniotic embryo fluid, and it's this like, it's coming from another place entirely. And so gate 36 is that end of one cycle begin in just about to come into the beginning of the new. So the darkening of the light makes sense, where you have to go through a canal, you have to go through a transformative process. And the gene keys in the book, they call it, Richard Rudd, the author of the Gene Keys, which is another framework for the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching. Human design and the Gene Keys are both kind of playing on these 64 hexagrams of the I Ching. In the Gene Keys, the chapter is called Becoming Human, and the subtitle of the shadow subchapter is called The Dark Night of the Soul. So we can think about literal birth, as I've been talking about here, and then we can talk about the deaths and rebirths that we go through in life again and again, many times during the course of our life. There is this initiation process that helps us become more fully human once we're born, where we have to encounter our shadows and encounter a turbulent moment that really calls us into a reckoning with ourselves, where we can't just coast along, but we have to go through a tunnel, go through gates to the underworld, as the myth of Inanna and the myth of Persephone talk about this underworld descent. And I've been thinking about that a lot lately, about the descent of these goddesses that was such a common myth. There was an emphasis on descent in order to reascend, descent in order to strip fully naked into our authenticity so that we may ascend to the next cycle as a more pure and true form of ourselves. And there's not that much within the age of Aries and the age of Pisces that came after. There's less emphasis on the descent and more emphasis on the ramming our heads forward into the next chapter. And that really speaks to the age of Aries. That was when the patriarchy kind of emerged, I would say. I've been writing quite a bit about this on Substack. So if you want to check out Living the Spiral and subscribe there, I do put out a lot more articles and notes about these thoughts beyond the two new and full moon episodes that I'm currently recording. But I have been thinking about these markers, these 2000-ish year astrological cycles, as times that really encapsulate the nature of humanity. We're reaching the end of the age of Pisces. It is a time where we're really reckoning with the surrender that we have put forward into society and into our organizations and institutions, that we have surrendered a lot of our agency that was formed during the age of Aries. There was a lot of patriarchal and God culture, solar culture emerging. And during the age of Pisces, so far we have kind of seen that the light of the sun is within all of us. That happened at the early part of the age of Pisces with Christ and Buddha and other figures like that were recognizing that we have that solar power within us. But at the same time, there has been a tendency to surrender into the turbulence that we feel. And I think that as we reach the end of the age of Pisces, that we are kind of re-encountering what came about in the early parts of the age of Pisces around the time of Christ and Buddha, that was about that inner wellspring of source energy, that connection with source that we all have. And so that's coming up here as far as like going from the end of Pisces into the beginning of Aries with this new moon, as well as a few weeks ago, Saturn and Neptune, these massive planets at the outer realms of the solar system, both also moved into Aries after being in Pisces for 14 years for Neptune and 3 years for Saturn before that. And so there's a massive collective, beyond the scope of this year, there's a massive collective shift from Pisces energy into Aries energy. So I've just been thinking about Pisces a lot. And especially this last gate here, gate 36, this birth canal, dark night of the soul. So for this new moon, the sun and moon are both meeting in this gate. And the sun is our solar radiance. It's our conscious willpower. And the moon is our embodied nervous system. It's our feelings. It's our cyclic sensation of what it feels like to be human. That's not as much of a conscious perception. And so when they meet together, it is a great time for planting new seeds and for manifesting, because we're having this union of our lived experience in a somatic way, as well as our desires and our conscious will. And so having them both meet up in the birth canal in the dark night of the soul gate is quite something, because it is the ending of the ending. It's the ending of the zodiac wheel, the final gate of the entire mandala as it parallels with the zodiac wheel, because Aries gate 25 is what starts out the astrological new year every year. It's when the sun is in gate 25 every year. And so again, that transition from crisis, turbulence, into innocence and awe and baby chick, baby lamb, wide-eyed, kind of like everything is possible type of energy. The gift and city of Gate 36 are humanity and compassion. And I think for me, that's just like, it's this recognition that it's human nature to go through turbulent experiences. We begin with a turbulent experience, and every time we go through a turbulent experience, we learn something. We learn about our boundaries. We learn about how to exist and coexist. And the world isn't a free-floating, boundaryless sea, although sometimes it's nice to wish that it was that way. But we know that the sea isn't always nurturing. We can float on it, we can swim in it. It's filled with beauty, but there's also massive storms that can arise there. So it's learning how to have compassion for ourselves as we ride the big waves, and knowing that through riding these big waves, beauty and new beginnings will come, and they will be so much more poignant than if we didn't ride the big waves to get there. There's a certain pride of getting past a big wave, but there's also a certain, it's burned away all of the excess. It's stripped away the trappings that we wear on our body when you're rocked by a giant wave. Like, I've surfed a decent amount in my life, but never lived close enough truly to an ocean to like really, really surf. So when I do get near the ocean, I'm intrigued by it enough to want to ride those waves. And I have been tumbled and washing machined so crazy in the way that I haven't known which way is up and which way is down and where my board is and how I'm gonna make it back to shore. And there is something so humbling about the way the ocean will tumble you and show you who's boss. Within that, you're just like so small within that infinite amount of power that the ocean holds. And so this a true dark night of the soul, a moment in life where you're hitting a point that you never thought you'd hit, of that unknowable quality, that like free floating, flailing quality where the rug that you're standing on got pulled out from under you. That disorientation that comes from a true dark night in that way, or a true giant wave crash, is really something that can lead to forcing you to rest, forcing you to truly surrender. It's like the final surrender that might feel like death sometimes. Like birth can feel like death. I can't even imagine if you could remember what it was like to be born and squeezed through a birth canal. It's like, oh my gosh, that's just a crazy physiological thing that happens with humans, especially with our giant heads. How we make it to the other side sometimes is just like mind-boggling, literally. But that's the energy of this moon, guys. It's definitely not subtle, but it is leading to a consolidation of Aries energy. We know that on the other side of this new moon is the sprouting into action that I'm talking about here, is less confusion. It's less underwater kind of qualities, and all of the planets will be moving into the new cycle very soon. And even the North Node will be moving out of Pisces and into Aquarius, the opposite direction, because the nodes move in a retrograde motion across the skies throughout the years. And so Pisces, that's been so heavily saturated for so much time with planets there, will be kind of left alone for a little bit. And so that wateriness that we've felt, that waterloggedness, is going to be dissipating. So it's a new moon to think about what's new and the seeds that you want to plant as it relates to like this birth process, and also to really pay reverence and gratitude to the things that you've learned with Pisces. And wherever Pisces lands in your chart, if you'd like a reading, you can always reach out at hearthandspiral.com on my booking page to dive into where Pisces is in your chart. But whatever house that it finds itself in is the part of your life that might have been affected for the past decade or so, a little longer, by this quality of boundarylessness and inspiration and possibility, but also that like confusion and waterloggedness that can be the boundaries, the lacking boundaries of Pisces. This is definitely a culmination point, this 36th gene key, this darkening of the light, this turbulence, and compassion is definitely the key word there. In so many religious traditions, compassion is the word that comes through as kind of the point of it all. When we reach the end, when we reach the Siddhic level of the end gate of of the zodiac new year, we reach compassion. And this awareness that every living being goes through crisis, goes through tumultuousness. You're not alone, as much as it can feel like you're alone. It's just a beautiful contemplation to think about, is compassion. And in the Gene Keys, Richard Rudd talks about compassion at the 36th city is related to the life of Christ. And I was not raised in a Christian tradition. There's been some pain and suffering related to Christianity in my family line. And so I was raised kind of on the opposite end of that. But I am intrigued because it is within my lineage, Christianity for sure, for certain. And lately I've been intrigued and following some threads about especially early Christianity, the Gnostic texts, the Gospels of Mary Magdalene, as well as the scriptures and the Gospels that are included there, and just really trying to attune to that beginning of the age of Pisces, as I mentioned, and where we find ourselves now at the end of the age of Pisces as it relates to Christianity. And Richard Rudd says, there is perhaps no better symbol for the entire journey from the 36th shadow to the 36th city than the life of Christ. In examining the 64 cities, one can see that certain gene keys appear to have very strong connections with certain mystical lineages or figures. The myth of Christ is one of those key repeating lineages, but the lineage does not so much concern the historical personage of Jesus himself as the frequency represented by him. The symbol of Christ on the cross is a powerful reminder of the truths inherent within this 36 gene key. It reminds us that we are each mortal and that there is great beauty in our humanity, echoed in Christ's assertion that he was the Son of Man. People who do not understand the true relevance of the symbol of Christ on the cross may see this as an inglorious representation of a god. In most religions, the prophets or gods are seen as powerful, beautiful, or awesome, whereas the figure of a man dying helplessly on a cross appears to be a deep representation of a victim state of consciousness. However, it is in this aspect of Christ that makes him such an approachable figure for so many people. The fact that he is suffering makes him more human. This approachability is what sets the 36th city so far apart from many of the other manifestations of the Siddhic level of consciousness. This is a city that spans the chasm between man and God, between being a victim and being enlightened. It speaks to every single human being, and it asks each of us to ask ourselves a single question: why must I suffer? The answer to the question of suffering lies here within the 36th city. It is the same answer given to us by the 25th city, which is that next one, the Aries one. It's all about love. However, the universal love manifested in the 25th city is very different from the compassion expressed through the 36th city. Universal love almost has a distant quality to it, as though it came from the gods themselves. The 36th city, on the other hand, speaks in the language of man, since it can only flower through a journey of intense suffering. Such is the path of the 36th gene key. This is the flowering of suffering itself, and as such, it can no longer be understood through the word suffering. It is the fragrance released after the storm is over, and just like the 36th gift of humanity, this is a city that has to be earned. So that was from the book The Gene Keys by Richard Rudd. And I find that fascinating, that to be human is to suffer, right? To be an incarnate body in this planet is to experience suffering. And the question of why must I suffer does arise here. And that's definitely a question that I think a lot of us are asking ourselves right now, because why must so many people suffer? This world has so much suffering in this current moment. And, it's not something for me to answer, to have a solution to. There is something about sitting with that, sitting in that liminal, uncomfortable space and feeling compassion. One thing that's really interesting to me about the word compassion is that it comes from passion, the word passion. And over the course of the beginning of this year, I had a crazy transmission download about passion, about the word passion, about passion fruit and passion flowers. I've come up with an entire kind of cosmology related to passion fruit and passion flowers because of my deep love for them. Favorite flower, favorite fruit, in case you were wondering. But there was a lot that came through as far as looking at the symbolism of them. And passion flowers were actually named as such by Christian missionaries to South America, and where they found these flowers and thought that they looked like the different parts of the flowers represented the crown of Christ, and the nails that were put through his hands and feet are in the part of the passion flower, and just the way that it looks was resemblant of the passions of the Christ to these Catholic missionaries and explorers back in the 1500s. And I looked up the origin of the word passion, and because I think of passion, most of us in modern times think of the word passion as a word that means like exuberance or enthusiasm about something, or like a deep investment into something. But it actually comes from the passions of the Christ, like the suffering of Christ is where passion initially came from. And over time, the etymology of that word shifted and changed, but for a very long time, it was related more to suffering. And so I think that really, when we think about passion and compassion, and when we think about passion as suffering versus passion as enthusiasm, there's really a lot to take away there. It's almost like you have to be passionate about something to be willing to suffer through what it takes to get to the juice, to get to the goodness, right? So that's really a lot of what this new moon is about. This new moon in the final line of the final gate before we reach the astrological new year. I'd recommend spending some time on this new moon, planting seeds, thinking, journaling about what it means to be passionate about something and what it means to suffer and why we must go through this. I think of this silly tenet, like whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger, which I feel like was on a lot of t-shirts like in the 90s, and it felt a little like aggressive, but there is something to that. There is something to going through a transformative initiation that allows us to see who we really are and to get connected to our true authenticity. Another interesting thing about this is that on the day of the new moon, when the sun and moon are in 36, Venus is in gate 51, which is an Aries gate known as the gate of shock. And the reason why this is important, it doesn't make an aspect in the zodiac wheel to the 25, but when the moon and sun come together in 36, they then move into 25, which is the gate of universal love and innocence, that Aries newborn baby gate. The 25 and 51, so the innocence and the shock, come together into a channel called the gate of initiation, or the channel of initiation, or the channel of awakening in the human design body graph. And so that's a really fascinating thing, because Venus with the sun and moon will be connecting the G center, which is the heart center, or the center of direction and identity in the body graph, with the will center, which is another one of the heart centers. The heart kind of is split in two in the human design body graph. So it's lighting up both the will center, that part of the heart that is our drive and our will to make something happen, and then the kind of universal love of the G center, this kind of openness to experience and that which gives us direction. So the 25 is going to connect to 51, and it's known as the channel of initiation. So that will be lit up during this new moon. And that really feels like on the nose for this threshold moment. We're talking about the dark night of the soul. We're talking about the birth canal. We're talking about crisis. We're talking about the passions of Christ and being passionate enough to make it through turbulent times and having compassion for ourselves. And then having Venus lighting up 51, the gate of shock, is connecting these two into an initiatory quality. So having just been born, it's like this 25 energy of the newborn lamb, the newborn duck, the newborn chick, and then meeting up with kind of the shock of the world. And so this channel can feel a bit initiatory in the same way that a birth feels initiatory, perhaps, but it's a little more conscious. And it's going to bring forth initiations that you must have courage to withstand and move through. And, nobody likes to hear the word shock, especially at times like this. But I think having Venus in the gate of shock is about like recognizing how we value that awakening that a lightning bolt can, you're kind of driving through the dark, and then there's a big lightning bolt that lights everything up around you and makes you aware of what is actually going on without having to research and dig and estimate and analyze too much. It's really this kind of momentary shock, this momentary bright light that initiates you into a knowing that you didn't have before. So having just been born into this new cycle and then having this bright light of awakening happen around the same time will add definitely a certain power and potency to this new moon. So be compassionate with yourself, be gentle with yourself, feel into that universal love of like why we are doing anything that we do, like why we're fighting the fights that we're fighting, and why we're willing to be passionate and wake up and sprout into action and not feel like we need to keep floating for a little bit longer, because this is the time to move, not with a sense of urgency, but with a sense of awakening, a sense of a new beginning. So let the disruption initiate you. Initiations are something that we don't have as much in our Western culture as we did at one point. And I've read a lot lately about how that's problematic, right? To not have a rite of passage that we go through within our society where we consciously are going through a struggle that we can come out of on the other side and be consciously reverent about what it is that we learned. And so I think that this channel of initiation, this Venus in the gate of shock and the sun in the crisis of the birth canal into the awakening of the innocent new realm, like all of this that's happening at this current moment with the planets in the sky and with the plants and animals on Earth, there is a lot of signs pointing to like, okay, it's time to wake up. But we can do it through processes. We can create our own rituals. We can bring in rites of passage to help usher in a new age rather than just waiting to react to whatever it is that's being thrown our way. So that's something that's happening. Another couple of aspects that are happening in the astrological wheel on this new moon are the sextiles to Uranus and Juno. So the moon is sextile Uranus in Taurus. And so that's kind of this connection to embodiment, where the body really knows something before the mind does. and this feeling of awakening that's happening at the somatic level, at the embodied level, before our minds have really caught up to it. Taurus is the sign of embodiment. It's the bull kind of sitting in the meadow and witnessing slowly what's going on around it. And so having Uranus there, where Uranus has been for a while, but with a kind sextile to the new moon, it's really bringing in that awakening energy from that lightning bolt of energy from an embodied place. And then we have Juno at 28 degrees of Capricorn also making a sextile. And Juno is the asteroid of commitments and partnerships and marriage and long agreements of your life. And so that's something, those are some themes that might come up during this full moon. Again, a sextile is a pretty gentle, harmonious aspect to the moon. And so it's kind of asking you what relationship structures are being renegotiated within this new beginning. It's not a harsh square or opposition. It's really bringing in kind of what are the quiet renegotiations that are happening beneath the surface. So not a shocking reevaluation to your committed partnerships, but invitations to check in with, if you're new beginning, you're going through the birth canal, you can only do that alone. You're born alone, you die alone kind of thing. But you are in relationship still with the world, with people. And so this is a time to just provide a soft landing for an invitation to think about how your evolution and your rebirth is affecting those that you're close with. Your husband, your wife, or your partner, or your friend group, your family, whoever it is. Juno can really bring that to the table. So that's the new moon. There's a lot there, no big deal. Just a little birth process, a little birth canal process, dark night of the soul. No big deal. Nothing to be afraid of. There's a lot of supportive aspects here. And even that channel of initiation just brings it into consciousness that we are being initiated into something, and we're not just like batting off the flies that are kind of coming in our faces and buzzing around. Like, it will take a conscious initiation. So here we are. This is what's being offered. And then after the new moon, the next day, or on the 20th, Mercury is stationing direct in Pisces after 3 weeks in retrograde motion. And that's happening in gate 37. And that's the Pisces gate of the family and friendships and community, collaborations, agreements that hold community together. Those are all held within gate 37. So Mercury's been retrograde in Pisces for 3 weeks, really giving us time to revisit old stories and reimagine ways of being. Retrogrades are all about revisioning, reimagining, recalibrating, redoing, all of those types of things. And so think back over the past 3 weeks, what Piscean types of things have you been reimagining and re-envisioning when it comes to where Pisces is in your particular chart, and also when it comes to boundaries and spirituality and the ethereal. And so especially in gate 37, it's about our collective community agreements. So when it stations direct in this gate, it's not necessarily about clarity immediately coming back, but it's about moving forward from all of the learnings that we've gotten from these reevaluations about what it means to be part of community and what holds community together. Like, what agreements do you now, after this review process, what do you agree to? What do you want to change about those agreements? Are you part of a group where you have thought that you have to give up part of yourself in order to be welcomed into that group? Like, do you want to change that agreement? Do you want to renegotiate what that looks like? When Mercury stations direct, that's what's going to happen. And so it's a relational and intimate place. And Mercury is going to stay in gate 37 after the new moon for 10 more days until March 28th. So it's already been there for a few days and is now going to stay there longer. Usually Mercury doesn't spend that long in a gate, but because it was going backwards and then forwards again, it's staying an exceptionally long amount of time in gate 37. So it's a time to communicate. Mercury is all about communication, your friends and family and communities and organizations that you're a part of about what has come up for you over that retrograde period, and making sure that you are connecting with the groups that you're within in an intentional way, so that your post-initiation self, your awakened self, can belong without feeling bound. Moving on from that, we'll move into the astrological new year. And I'm going to speak to this only briefly because I'm going to be doing the ritual on March 21st. If you register, there will be a recording for Sprouting into Action, the spring equinox and astrological new year ritual. And so if you can't make it live, but you'd like to get a recording of the somatic practices and creative writing and art prompts, you can sign up for it using the link in the Substack or in the show notes, wherever it is that you're listening to this, and you'll get a recording. So that's where I'll speak more to the equinox and the astrological new year. It's known as Ostara in the pagan wheel of the year. And it's a beautiful holiday. I absolutely love it. There's a lot of really interesting tidbits throughout history about how this equinox has been celebrated in Greek times and Roman times and before, and I'm excited to speak to that and to share some of those stories. But for now, I'll just say that the astrological new year is happening in gate 25, the gate of innocence, the gate of acceptance, the gate of universal love, and that shift from the last degrees of Pisces into gate 25 with Mercury stationing direct at the same time. It kind of feels like this is the all systems go moment. For better, that can feel a little bit like hair raising in my body because it feels like systems have already been going, but there has been a good amount of underwater, like not really knowing what's actually going on or how I can engage as a body, as an individual within all of the collective chaos. And so this transition here from the new moon to the Mercury direct to the spring equinox is really a time to embrace the birth of yourself anew in this new reality without holding on to the past and only bringing along with you what feels like it will serve you as an agile lamb frolicking through the fields of flowers that are blooming in early spring in this new world that we live in. So yeah, this is like a full arc of descent and return compressed into 36 hours. It's definitely a potent threshold. It's like Inanna coming back up through all of the gates after descending to the underworld and reclaiming each piece of herself along the way. Not the same as she was before. This kind of being reborn and seeing things that you've seen in the past in a completely new way, a transformative way. And so here we are. We're invited into our bodies. We're invited into relationship. Both those things are very important on this threshold. And so something to think about is just how we can learn from whatever feels like it's bringing us suffering at this time. What kind of wisdom is contained within that can help our passions really be born into this new realm. I invite you to write about what you're seeding for this new astrological year and what you're seeding for this new lunar cycle with this new moon. There's a lot of manifestation possibilities. I would say light a candle and just do a little bit of free writing or free drawing and see what comes through, and keep a beginner's mind because we are coming into a full new cycle and a full new chapter. And if you'd like to do this together to work within a container or catch the recording, you can join me for Sprouting into Action on Saturday, March 21st. Link in the show notes. And yeah, this is your moment. This is your moment to step into your magic, to go through the gates, through the birth canal, through the threshold, and know that it'll be worth it to come out the other side with that fresh perspective. So I thank you so much for being here on Living the Spiral. And again, you can follow me at Hearth and Spiral on Instagram or on YouTube. And Living the Spiral is where my Substack lives, with a lot of extra goodies and pictures and notes and fun stuff there. I'm enjoying the Substack world right now. So join me there. And thanks again for being here. Have a beautiful new moon, a beautiful beginning to the astrological new year. And I'll see you again for the next full moon.